actually. Let me do this. Spawning in the top right position as the red Terran player from Team SK Telecom T1, it is FanTaSy. And his opponent in the bottom left position as the blue Protoss player. I've actually never heard of this man prior to this qualifier, but he is, remember, his tag, Lodum, perhaps. It's a Terran versus Protoss on Whirlwind to kick this off, man. This is going to be a great qualifier tonight. This is the first match that we're going to be having, so if there's any weird sound issues, whatnot, they will be addressed after this game. But already it looks like FanTaSy with this rally could be looking to do something a little bit interesting at the start of this this series. Now, these are all best of threes, and this is a relatively large qualifier. Lots of top-level Korean players. Flash, obviously, FanTaSy. A few other big names. San, Su. So this is for the Intel Extreme Masters Singapore tournament, which will be occurring on the weekend of November 28th. And pretty much the top 4 players, by the way, it seems like a pretty fast gateway. The top 4 players from this Stage 1 qualifier, there's 2 Stage 1 qualifiers, will advance on to Stage 2 qualifier, and from there, 2 players will get a full paid trip to go to Singapore next month for the Intel Extreme Masters tournament. Now, FanTaSy's chosen to open up with this gas first build versus a relatively quick gateway into Cybernetics Core 4. Remember, typically speaking, I mean, it feels like he definitely eked this setup out a little bit early and could be looking to do some fast aggression. We just now see that second pylon being added. The Zealot's already on the way, and we could have a very fast Mothership Core follow-up. There will be enough gas for the Mothership Core or a Stalker, and then soon both of them. So this looks like a very fast, aggressive type of attack that will be coming out of the Protoss player. Let's just keep in mind here, this Marine comes down, should be able to prevent this probe from seeing too much. Now, remember to not get fast enough of a scout to actually know what the build was. He saw a single Marine, but he didn't see the factory. So FanTaSy has the option of getting out a fast Widow Mine, which can be great for defense. He'll also have the opportunity, of course, to go straight into a starport. He can immediately get right back on the offensive. Remember, has that Zealot crossing the map. There's the Mothership Core as well, and we should, in turn, see the Stalker. Now, immediately queues up a second Stalker. Remember, wants to be very aggressive. SK Telecom Terran player is kind of, he's kind of a champion. He's a very, very strong Terran, and I'd say probably one of the tougher guys in this bracket, especially with Remember being someone that I honestly don't know too much about. We do have the Widow Mine coming in. The Starport is on the way. FanTaSy doesn't yet realize the severity of this attack. All he saw was that Zealot. If he's even aware that it's still here, the SCV finally going out to scout, but it's not going to find anything that fast. One Time Warp could actually do this for us incompletely for FanTaSy. He needs to be careful. The Stalker gets a shot off. The Zealot now giving chase. He will try to retreat to the safety of the Widow Mine. And he can use this as a little bit of a cushion. He can sit back and say, well, remember, if you want to cross over here, you will have to take this Widow Mine shot. Now, keep in mind, the Mothership Core can actually survive one hit from this Widow Mine. But no, he's actually choosing to engage at the ramp area, choosing to bypass actually entering the main base, and instead just trying to focus this supply depot. And not a necessarily bad decision, but FanTaSy's coming down. A Widow Mine does pick out that Stalker. The Time Warp being used to hold these Marines in place, trying to focus the Marines down with the Mothership Core. That's the only anti-air that FanTaSy has. These 2 Hellions can help deal with the Stalker, but now the Medevac does enter the fray with that healing ability, can help out to deal with this even more, but with no Marines left, does pick off another one. This is still a really difficult situation. The Widow Mine cooldown will be off soon, but he lost all of his Marines. He knows now about the Starport, and this SCV gets scouting information, but we see a second gateway added on. We also see the robotics facility added at the same time, and FanTaSy should recognize that the expansion will be taken, especially seeing that it's a robotics facility, but already a very aggressive start to this best of 3. FanTaSy thankfully didn't lose too much here, but as far as expansions timings go, actually the Hellions make it into the main base through that medevac, so FanTaSy still has an opportunity to do some damage. The probes are actually being pulled to try to help deal with this and just stay away from this, but this is not working out quite the way that Remember had really been hoping. I'm surprised these Hellions were able to make it in so easily. Not any kind of crazy amounts of damage. He only killed 4 probes, but on one base, that's a huge deal. And the medevac is still here. Oh, this SCV is going to get rescued. This is actually adorable. So he's going to drop the Hellion back inside. Please rescue that SCV. I would be so happy. There we go. He's off to a better place now. He's off to a better place. Hellion runs back inside of the main base for FanTaSy, trying to get a read on anything else that may have changed, but still just 2 gateways and this robotics facility. Nexus is finally on the way as the command center finishes. We see that FanTaSy has built 2 tech labs back at home. He's going to move straight into this bio. He's getting all of his upgrades set up very quickly. Very nice timings on this to be able to have them line up at least decently enough that FanTaSy's not too far behind in the tech game. And looking at what Remember has, since that second base gas will be delayed quite a bit, he can't jump up in the tech that fast himself. We have the Observer going to get a little bit of information to help stay alive, but he has to warp in some sentries back home. Not a bad decision. Remember just wants to have the ability to hold off any type of counterattack that FanTaSy can bring. And this medevac is actually coming over here with nothing inside of it. I'm wondering if this is just a scouting medevac. Actually trying to find where that SCV was that was dropped off. There we go. That guy is a hero. FanTaSy taking the natural expansion now. And it looks like this medevac is just being used by FanTaSy, abusing basically the speed of the medevac to just get scouting information. Observer now coming into that main base, and the factory will move out at the same time. But there's the robotics bay. Remember, it looks like we're going to see some Colossus play. Medevac dips in, and he does confirm the natural expansion. This is actually a really nice touch. I like that. I like that FanTaSy has used this fast unit to get a read on that. Now, this is where he starts to turn it up a little bit. He has the Marines and the Marauders moving out. There are some medevacs here to help heal that. And remember, realizes this. He sees that this tech setup is already complete prior to 10 minutes. It's always impressive, you know, as the Terran player, you want to be able to get that stim set up around 10 minutes. Just bring the pressure before the Protoss can really move into a tech-heavy composition. And we can see that Remember does have an Immortal being chrono boosted out. He needs a little bit of defense. He is a tiny bit worried. However, he does, of course, have that Mothership core to fall back onto. He'll soon have 2 photon overcharges available. And this wonderful Observer positioning for Remember really keeps him safe from any kind of drop harass. So FanTaSy can press the front, but he's actually still about 20 seconds away from Stim. And he will force that photon overcharge. He ducks in right outside the Observer's vision, but Remember isn't going to be fooled. He does have a pylon here to spot as well. FanTaSy getting that drop in the main base. Stim is done, but will be forced to retreat. Does manage to save most of his bio here. Doesn't lose anything at all. And he's starting the 3rd command center. So FanTaSy isn't looking to commit to any type of 2-base play. We do have that +1 attack about to complete at the same time. The first forge being added for Remember. Very important. Yeah, he's actually going to go double forge. That was my first thought, considering that he does have much later upgrades than FanTaSy. Going double forge, not really a terrible decision. The first Colossus is also on the way. And what this means is, Remember could actually just get his +1 attack, get the +1 armor, as FanTaSy picks off an Observer here outside the natural, and then he can move into Templar. We have the Twilight Council coming in. Now FanTaSy's actually just going to try to get a little bit of damage done here. Photon Overcharge is activated. He picks off an Immortal and immediately boosts away, still managing to save a large number of his units as a Widowmine drop heads into the main base. What does Remember have here to hold this off? The Widowmine is burrowing. Are we going to get any big hits? Nah, it was okay. Nothing crazy. Looked like about 2 probe kills there. The Colossus is out for Remember, and the Twilight Council is complete as +1 armor and attack upgrades are going for Remember. Now his probe has spotted this 3rd base. Looks like FanTaSy had a weird positioning on it. Does need to get that set back. Remember's probe sees everything and promptly dies a horrible death. Viking production has begun for FanTaSy. This is a great opportunity for Remember to just switch away from this tech path completely. If he can force out enough Vikings, delay Ghosts, this could give him a really nice opportunity to push with Storm later on in this game. And there we have it, the Templar Archives being warped in. It's going to be Templar. It's going to be Templar. We're going to have Archons on the map, and we're also going to see with this charge a very powerful force. But FanTaSy's +1 attack, +1 armor is almost done. That switch into Templar is not yet complete. This is a very vulnerable force for Remember. He needs to continue to just warp in units basically nonstop. Thankfully for him, these Observers have been able to spot basically everything that FanTaSy's been up to throughout the course of this game. So he'll know that this attack is coming. He does need to be careful. The Templar Archives is complete. We could see an Archon or 2 get warped in just as a panic reaction, since, I mean, starting Storm at this time, he won't have an easy time actually getting those upgrades together. There, the 2 Templar. Is it going to be an Archon early on? There's no Storm Research. He's just going to press into the natural FanTaSy, choosing to commit rather early on. Those Vikings are looking for that lone Colossus, and they will find it now. The Mothership Core using that Fulton Overcharge. Is FanTaSy going to commit to the natural Nexus? It looks like no. He's just going to run into the main base. Picks off the Forge before +1 armor can complete. A very nice stop here for the SK Telecom Terran player, and he's just stepping back into the main base. Further shuts down the robotics facility. Another double Forge being produced. And remember, very worried about these upgrades. The +1 attack finishes with this Archon's focused down, and that's all there is. FanTaSy takes game number 1 here in this best of 3 at the Intel Extreme Masters Singapore qualifier.